Welcome to All Things Work. I'm your host, Ann Sparaco. Today, we're diving into how HR and other teams at all levels can be involved in succession planning, a critical process ensuring leadership continuity and organizational sustainability. And joining us today is Bertha Robinson, executive coach, business consultant, and expert in leadership development. Welcome to All Things Work, Bertha.
Oh, thank you for having me today. And I'm really excited about our conversation today. And I'm a true believer in having a conversation, especially today around succession planning.
Well, we're so excited to have you, and clearly you have passion in this work. So I would love to start off with just a simple question, kind of what got you into this work? Where did you start? Tell us a little bit about your background.
Fantastic. I started actually in 2016 is when I started my business, Star One Professional Services. Prior to, I had a 19-year career in corporate, and my role ended with my prior company. And when it ended and we separated, I said, okay, what am I going to do now? What do I have? What tools do I have that I can transfer into something new, into a new role? I didn't want to go back into the same type of corporate space. I was looking, and through an outplacement agency, it was introduced to me that I could start my own consultancy. So Star One Professional Services was born in 2016, where we've been coaching and dealing and helping leaders develop. And part of that is all things planning, business planning, strategic planning, succession planning, continuity, and exit planning. So
That's awesome. Well, obviously the passion is there, the experience is there. So that's what we love in that combination here on All Things Work. So when a lot of people probably really understand the gist of succession planning, but from your perspective, I'd love to hear more of a clear definition and why it's so important in organizations today.
absolutely. Succession planning is defined as a future focused, disciplined process that's going to help leaders identify those mission critical roles and then tap into your internal talent and intentionally really develop them so that they can move up and you have this strong bench and move up into those gaps. The other thing that succession planning does by having those intentional leadership development and having those folks ready is that it also is going to help the culture of the organization, and it's also going to help you really be different and diversify. So I'm looking forward to chatting a little bit more about that.
Yeah, you can tell really how important it is for the overall organization or company. So we've seen some shifts here recently in the workforce with the rise of hybrid and remote work models. And of course, the generational shifts in the workforce. We have the most generations in the workforce at the moment. So, how has a succession planning evolved in recent years with all these shifts?
Great question. So with the hybrid remote, involved now, being digital literate is really important. We now have to shift our leadership from location based to network based leadership. Being fluent in all things digital. So I'm going to continue to use that theme, all things. Making sure that we have now an ability for our leaders to now flex their communication styles, to flex the ability to know how to manage remotely across time zones, to build trust. So, really, this has been an opportunity now for leaders to stretch in ways that they hadn't before. And how I would say that it's changed succession planning at its root, foundational, the succession planning itself, in terms of the framework, hasn't changed. But the opportunity now that it has introduced is really great. It's not just a threat, it's an opportunity for businesses now. So as they're building their bench and that they're developing their leaders, now they're going to see how they can learn as well. Like you mentioned, there are 5 generations now in the workforce. They're going to be able to now tap into the talent to really not only just get the talent ready for the roles and the gaps that are currently in place, those mission critical roles, but also then give them extra skills, upskilling, so that when the role changes in the future, they'll be ready. So it actually is a differentiator and even, game changer for the organizations that implement succession planning.
I love that you talked about the opportunity of it all because succession planning can seem a little daunting. It's a lot of planning ahead, trying to think of all these different possibilities. But if you think about it more as all the different opportunities, it's a little more motivating in a positive way. So I really like that you brought that up. I would love to jump into some actionable steps.
So triangulation there among your line leaders, your senior leaders, and then of course the architects of the entire framework, which comes from HR. And when I say senior leaders, I want to just throw in there that when you create this framework and you engage a team, at the very top, you're going to have the people data, which are the HR folks, and you're going to have the budget. So you're going to have the CFO in there. So those two are going to be working hand in hand as well.
That makes a lot of sense, and I like how you, called the, HR professional the architect of this structure here. I So we know that they are the core to even the much broader business goals that support the overall organization. So what steps should they really consider to ensure the plan succeeds in alignment with those broader goals?
At its root, it's identifying and preparing the successors. And in identifying who those successors are, there's a few steps in that process. So you want to first identify the mission critical roles, as we said in the initial definition. What are the roles that are mission critical? Pull out your organizational chart and see where there are the current gaps. Then you want to be able to identify who in the organization can fill those roles. And the process is that you identify those folks, you have an assessment process, you identify a actual role report or a role profile, you benchmark against that, and then you identify, okay, are there still any gaps and do we need any professional development, formal education, any coaching, mentoring in order to close the gap? Those are the processes that you would go through in order to get your bench ready for those gaps.
We know that succession planning, is just so critical. And I would love to learn more about this. There are probably situations where, life happens, things change, leaders, either one might suddenly pass away or one might actually leave due to, family issues or something. Is it really good to try to keep level headed when thinking about those possibilities in such a succession plan?
Yes, you should. You should be level headed. And this is why I really promote succession planning and all planning as living documents. Things are changing rapidly, roles are morphing quickly. So to take advantage now, being proactive is the time to do it because you don't know when those urgent, quick, rapid, unplanned leaves are going to happen. So you want to be prepared. And hence, that's what the plan is all about. It's about being prepared. So taking a proactive mindset and not getting overwhelmed, it's actually starting small. I don't know who to attribute the quote to, but you want to think big and work small. So you want to be able to look at what's our overall vision, where are the gaps, which are the mission critical gaps, how do we identify who in our organization can fill them, and then you start there just by having developmental conversations with those individuals, and then you lay out a plan for development. So it's better to start now than to wait as any kind of plan until okay, now we really need it. Right now we're behind the scenes, and you'll see examples of organizations like Microsoft that implement succession planning successfully. That's how we see, the role of Satya Nadella, today in Microsoft, because he was already in place in I think it was 2013, when the previous CEO left. So it's getting ready. You never know. And I encourage that succession planning. I'm talking about mission critical roles, but doing it departmentally, finding out who can I move up? Where can we, where are there opportunities where there's cross training? So you are constantly in the role of getting ready for the next step.
A lot of effort, but that preemptive approach can really keep everybody calm and the same time as strategic. So you already have an idea. You're constantly seeing the developments and working with those developments. I was always raised to be ready to take on any opportunity should it come your way. So from the individual employee, I feel like I'm always succession planning my own work. I'm always making sure, okay, if this changes, I'm ready to jump in, or if that changes, I'm ready to ask this other person. So just even down to the individual employee, it's good to have that mindset, especially like you said, think big, work small. I love that. So I would love to talk a little bit more on some more concrete ways HR can work with senior leadership. What are some steps they can do to really assess the readiness of those potential successors for leadership roles? I know you said obviously think big, work small. What are some other steps?
So you can create the opportunity for some blended and hybrid collaborations where you can have your high potential successors. So those are the ones that are, potentially ready now for those next seats to work with the current leaders as they're on their way out, so that you can have that cross training. You can also have an opportunity to have them experience from role to role, so they can go from operations to customer experience to sales to all the different departments. So you now have someone who is enterprise experienced across the entire organization. Those are all the different opportunities that you have there. In your framework, I would say to start by saying, where can we implement some of the assessments so that we can have that in place?
Mhm.
There are lots of multi-science assessments that you can implement that will give you information on where there are gaps in our current employees and team members on emotional intelligence and acumen and strategic thinking, and identifying where those gaps are. You can then implement that part of your leadership development plan. You have an opportunity to create ways that you can identify your potentials, and also how can you also give them the steady promotion, steady help, and support across their own team. So you have that where you can do that with leaders, you can do that across the team, you can do that cross functionally. There's that support as well.
Okay, great. And we love to bring in SHRM research. We had a recent report called CHRO Priorities and Perspectives, and it highlights leadership and manager development was actually a priority, a top priority for about 51% of CHROs as of 2025. That's a pretty big number, really significant that they are in alignment of what is really necessary to for business success. So why do you think leadership development, manager development has become such a critical focus in the context of succession planning? Why now?
There are so many shifts. There are so many different gaps in leadership. There are opportunities where there are folks that are leaving. There's lack of talent availability. So right now, everyone's really trying to say, how do we improve our talent? How do we improve leadership? We have, again, to mention, 5 generations in the workforce. And I'd like to quote some research that I found. And there is a silver tsunami that's coming. And the silver tsunami is saying that by 2030, we are going to have about 76 million boomers age ready, retirement ready. And every day now we have 10,000 folks that are leaving the workforce every day. So if we are seeing that type of talent gap or opportunity gap now, by 2030, I would call that a chasm. So how do we prepare for that? Side by side, by 2030, we also have this big gap, a skills gap that's going to take place. And you're talking about we talked about the digital literacy and getting digital ready. We absolutely are seeing that grow. So this is the time when folks are really seeing the cues and saying we need to develop our leaders at all levels, especially when we're seeing those roles that are going to help sustain our missions across the board. So that's why I really say that taking a proactive approach is critical, is important. And also, it could be your differentiator. So I believe 56% of folks are not succession planning. So you want to be part of that 44% that are. And that's going to set your business, your organization apart. You're going to be able to drive talent in your organization, folks are going to want to stay. They're going to feel engaged. They're going to feel like, yeah, there are opportunities here. And creating talent and opportunity dashboards where folks can see what's going on, what's available, maybe even raising their own hands to say, I'd like to participate in a project so that they're volunteering in the process already to get bench ready. So this is really, I believe, why it's being identified that we need to develop our leaders because we are about to go into more of a gap. We're going into what I call leadership chasm.
Yeah, you never know when you're gonna be called off the bench to play the game. So, and I love this quote from Johnny. He talked about it, with our workers here at SHRM. Johnny C. Taylor Jr., our president and CEO, he always says you have to keep ahead of the change internally to outpace the change externally. So you have to pay attention to what's going on with these labor market shifts, generational shifts, and understanding how that's going to impact your internal organization and taking that proactive approach. So that really falls in line with everything, Johnny talks about a lot. So I'd love to hear that. So when it comes to those leadership development programs, to effectively build a steady pipeline of successors. What are some specific strategies or structures HR and senior leadership implement into those programs?
Sure. I would say opening up career pathing options, opening up these, I think I had mentioned, are blended cohorts. I think that that's really great where you have the cohort of the high potentials with the leaders, whether these are leaders that are, soon to leave or planning down the line 5 years or so, you're already proactively preparing. I also think that leadership development programs that are focused around building competencies back to emotional intelligence, adaptability, having the ability to strategically think and shift under high velocity, under high pressure. Because of what we're talking about now, things are not going to slow down. They're only going to go at a faster pace. And that's one of the differentiators between succession planning today and succession planning yesterday is that the pace of things is just upticking.
So you mentioned this before, how succession planning can really implement, positive cultures as well, healthy workplace cultures. How can HR teams really foster a culture that supports such a succession plan?
So I would say I'm gonna make this analogy. So if culture is the soil and succession planning is the seed, you need transparency and growth opportunity, leadership development opportunities in order for that seed to grow. So succession planning really helps your culture because folks are seeing that hey, this is the place where I can grow. This is the place that has a lot of opportunity. This is a place that sees me, hears me, and wants my input. Because in succession planning, it's not one way, right? It's bidirectional. You're going to be able to identify what you need for that role, but you're also going to want to hear from boots on the ground from your teams saying, yes, but we also are going to need this. This is what we're seeing that we need in this new age, new skills, new opportunities to differentiate, to get ahead. So these are the opportunities where folks are going to say, this is a place for me because of the engagement. It's going to add the engagement.
So going back to that report we mentioned earlier from SHRM Research, we have another piece of data. We found 50% of CHROs actually struggle to maintain employee engagement and morale. So we talked about how this plays a huge role in a healthy workplace culture to support that seed to be the good soil, the healthy soil. So could HR use succession planning actually as a tool to motivate employees and retain those high potential talent? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely. That's the way to do it. Succession planning is just that. You are identifying folks that have top skills, that are love the culture, want to stay there. They see a path forward, implementing things like a dashboard where you can see what opportunities are out there, have it open so it's reversed. so that you can ask them, what are some of the skills, what are some of the things that you'd like to see cross functionally working in different departments, in different functions. They're going to be really excited and engaged to come to work, to be able to try new things, to be able to take advantage, especially, the younger generations want to be engaged with mentoring and coaching and formal education and leadership development and all of that. That's going to say, this is the place where I want to be. There's activity, there's life, there's growth, there's opportunity. That's how you keep people engaged. Hiding things, and lack of transparency, I should say. And I know that if we haven't done the thing before, we are a little bit change averse. And change is difficult, especially in high velocity and in changing times and in uncertainty. But when folks are seeing that this is not talked about, I don't see a way forward, I don't see a path where I can see myself in any of those leadership roles, they'll turn over, they'll start to leave. And you want people to immediately, raise their hand and volunteer and to be vocal and to have those opportunities. So that's the way to engage your folks and to keep them on board. And the key here in succession planning, as I shared in the definition, is identifying and tapping your internal talent first. That's where, as I mentioned, your CFOs are going to say, we're going to see where there's better opportunity to drive the development internally than there is to bring new folks externally, right? So there's a cost to that. So absolutely, that's going to drive engagement. Folks are going to love it. It's going to change your culture. It's an opportunity. And again, that's what makes it a game changer for the organization, especially if a lot of organizations and companies are not succession planning. They're not getting ready.
Right, and another part of that CHRO priorities and perspectives report, they said that's where CHROs are really, really focusing on this year is the internal talent retention strategies. They're not really looking too much outside the organization. They're focusing on how to actually keep the talent they already have before they go searching outward. So that's really in line with the research we're seeing from C-suite leaders. You have so much great experience working with organizations to help them create and implement successful succession plans. So I would love to get a little bit of an example when you've felt really successful in helping an organization and what lessons came from it. You don't have to name the organization, just would love to get a solid idea of what you call a success story.
Yes, thank you. I worked with a financial firm, and the leadership had identified that they would be leaving. It was imminent. So immediately they said, okay, how do we prepare, the next folks to come into this role? Let's see, what can we do? So we identified through the subject matter experts, what are some of the qualities? Let's create this job report, this profile that includes all the skills that you need, the attitudes, the mindset. It's what I call the ask. Your attitude, your skills, and your knowledge, including your experience that you need for this role. So we created that job profile. After we created the job profile, then we created a benchmark against that so that we can have those potential successors benchmark against that. And then after that, we identified, well, what are now the gaps in skills for those individuals to get them ready for that role? Let's see, where they fall. We then implemented a professional development, including coaching. We used multi-science assessments, 360s, and we successfully were able to get some successors into those roles that were going to be leaving. One first, and then of course the second one 5 years later. So we're really excited about that because there was transparency, there was conversation from the top. So it wasn't like, okay, we're leaving, we're not sharing the information, or we're leaving and we're not preparing. It was communicated. We identified, tell us what we need to do this role successfully. And on
Mhm.
top of that, not only to do the role today, but what's it going to take to do the role tomorrow?
Right.
That was a key differentiator because when we're looking at the talent that's coming in and the skills, we're not just looking at the skills that you need to do the role. we're also looking at the skills that the talent is bringing with them. So that was a fantastic success story.
Love success stories. Communication is clearly key in this situation, in many situations, but particularly this. I would love to leave our audience off with just one final thought. They might be listening and thinking, oh my gosh, there's so many things you can do, so many opportunities. Where do I begin? What is that easy first step to get into the groove of this and take that proactive approach?
Yes, I would love to share with the audience a few tips. First, pull out your organizational chart, identify what are those mission critical roles. Start with maybe six roles or fewer, but identify which ones are mission critical. Then start to identify, do I have any folks that are bench ready? Can I get my bench ready? And maybe from that, you can start to look at what type of assessing do we have? How are we collecting the strengths of our teams? How are we collecting? What are they bringing? What is the engagement? And to your point from earlier, those that are raising their hands, right? So we want to be able to identify those roles, then have those developmental conversations. So we can talk about what does it take. And then I would say one other takeaway, that's something that they can start today, is, start to then put that down on your calendar. What can I do this week to assess what are some of the mission critical roles? Who do I need to talk to that can help me to build the profile of the role? And then our bench, and then start to plan 30 days out. Let's get a developmental plan for these folks and take it away. Don't feel overwhelmed. Again, dream big, think big, but start small, and then just continue to iterate there.
Dream big, start small, and tell the coach you're ready to play the second they call you on to it, as long as the culture supports it. Thank you so much, Bertha, for your insights, your experience, and those concrete steps people can really take, with that calm but strategic mindset. So thank you so much for your insights today.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me to the conversation today. I had a lot of fun.
We had a great time. All right, that's going to do it for this week's episode of All Things Work. Just head to shrm.org/allthingswork to learn more and sign up for our newsletter as well. It has more of our research in there too. You can also catch us on SHRM's social media pages. Like, share, comment. We want you to be part of the conversation. Thanks for joining us. We'll catch you next time.
SHRM.